Max Hunter had always believed he was destined for greatness. He envisioned himself as a celebrated military arms expert, recognized not just for his knowledge of weaponry, but for his innovation and heroism. Instead, the reality was more like a slapstick comedy. On the battlefield, where chaos reigned, Max stood out, not for his bravery, but for his uncanny ability to trip over his own feet while trying to salvage a conventional weapon from the debris of a city under alien siege. It was a bright, albeit grim, morning when Max found himself crouched behind the remains of a blown-up alien tank. The air was thick with smoke and the faint echoes of distant explosions. As he peered over the edge of his makeshift cover, he spotted a group of aliens, their forms grotesque and imposing, moving with an eerie grace that only heightened the absurdity of his situation. Max's heart raced, not with fear but with the thrill of opportunity. He spotted a human-made weapon lying nearby, his chance to shine. "Just grab it, Max," he muttered to himself, as if coaxing a cat out of a tree. With a deep breath, he darted towards the weapon, his mind racing through a plethora of overly complicated strategies that had never worked before. "Max! Watch out!" a voice yelled from behind him, too late. In his quest for glory, Max had managed to step right into the line of fire of an alien energy beam. The weapon fired, illuminating the field with a blinding light, but instead of hitting him, it struck a nearby alien tank, obliterating it in a spectacular explosion that sent shockwaves through the ground. Max fell backward, landing unceremoniously in a puddle of muddy water. He blinked, half in shock and half in awe of the unexpected turn of events. The dust settled, and as the smoke cleared, he heard laughter. His fellow soldiers, who had witnessed the entire ordeal, were doubling over, pointing at him. "Max the Destroyer," one of them bellowed. "That's the bravest thing I've ever seen." Bravest? Max glanced at the remnants of the tank and back at his comrades, who were cheering him on as if he had just single-handedly saved the world. He raised a muddy thumb, feeling both ridiculous and oddly proud. As Max scrambled to his feet, he realized he'd stumbled onto something bigger than himself. Among the debris of the battle, he caught sight of something glimmering, an intact alien weapon. It was sleek, like a piece of high-tech jewelry, and it beckoned him with its otherworldly allure. Ignoring the voices of caution in his head, he snatched it up, feeling the weight of destiny, or perhaps just bad luck, pressing down on him. The moment he touched it, the weapon hummed to life, vibrating in his hand, sending a jolt of energy up his arm. "Whoa!" he exclaimed, his eyes widening. "This is cool." As he made his way back to base, he couldn't shake the feeling of elation. The alien weapon could be the key to turning the tide of the war. Just as the thought crossed his mind, the weapon unexpectedly activated, sending him soaring into the air in his car, a vehicle that had seen better days. "Max!" yelled his buddy Tom from the passenger seat, panic etched on his face. "What did you do?" "I don't know," Max shouted, wrestling with the steering wheel as the car spun wildly. Before he could finish, they landed with a thud, the car miraculously intact but now on its side. Max climbed out, brushing himself off, while Tom clung to the roof, eyes wide. "Okay, so that didn't go as planned," Max said sheepishly, trying to play it cool. The weapon buzzed in his pocket, almost as if laughing at him. Back at the military base, he was greeted by a mixed bag of reactions. The commanding officer looked at him with a blend of disbelief and annoyance. "Hunter, what the hell happened?" "I found this," Max declared, holding up the alien weapon like a trophy. "Why are you always covered in mud and chaos?" the officer sighed, but even he couldn't hide the flicker of interest in his eyes. "Because chaos is my middle name," Max said with a grin. It didn't take long for word to spread about Max's latest, heroic act. Before he knew it, he was in the lab with Dr. Lila Zhang, a genius scientist with frizzy hair and an infectious enthusiasm for all things explosive. She was bent over a table cluttered with tools and half-finished experiments, muttering to herself, "Max. What did you bring this time?" she asked without looking up, her glasses perched precariously on the tip of her nose. "Only the most advanced alien weapon known to mankind," he announced proudly, setting it down with a thud. Lila's eyes widened as she pushed her glasses up and examined the weapon. "This is incredible. But, how do we even begin to reverse engineer something like this?" "I have no idea," Max admitted, scratching his head. "But how hard could it be?" The next hour was a whirlwind of comical trials. Lila flipped switches, pressed buttons, and in true Max fashion, he provided ridiculous suggestions based on sci-fi movies he'd watched. "Let's see if it has a self-destruct feature," Max proposed, laughing. "Self-destruct?" Lila shot back, narrowing her eyes. "How about we don't blow up the lab today?" Amidst the chaos, they somehow made progress, at least in the form of mishaps that resulted in colorful explosions. As the weapon sparked and buzzed ominously, Lila sighed. "We might be in over our heads." "I love being in over my head," Max replied, grinning. But unbeknownst to them, the alien forces were closing in. Commander Zarn, a tall alien with an oversized ego and a penchant for dramatic entrances, had already noticed the disruption. He stood among his troops, glaring down at Earth through a holographic display. "They have the weapon," he growled, slamming a fist on the table. "Find it. Bring it to me." And so, the stage was set for a ridiculous game of cat and mouse. Max and Lila, armed with nothing but their wits and a malfunctioning alien weapon, were about to plunge headfirst into an adventure that would redefine their ideas of heroism, ingenuity, and, perhaps most importantly, how to avoid turning themselves into a pile of goo. Max and Lila worked late into the night, surrounded by gadgets and the faint glow of monitors displaying alien schematics. Every time Max pressed a button, there was a new flash of light and sound, as if the weapon itself were enjoying the chaos they created. Okay, let's focus," Lila said, adjusting her glasses again, which had slipped down her nose. "We need to figure out how to harness this thing. If Zarn's forces find us..." I know, Max interrupted, waving a hand dismissively. "But it's hard to concentrate when the fate of humanity is riding on an alien weapon I accidentally blew up a car with." Lila shot him a withering look. "We can't just improvise our way through this, Max. We need a plan." "Right, a plan." Max nodded, looking thoughtful. "How about we lure Zarn into a trap? Like in the movies. We could set up a decoy weapon, something shiny and new, and when he shows up, we..." "Wait," Lila said, her eyes lighting up. "That could actually work. If we make a decoy that looks like this weapon, we might be able to catch Zarn off guard. But we'll need to make it convincing." Max grinned, his enthusiasm returning. "I've got some ideas. We can use that old blender from the break room, some of that reflective foil, and..." "Are you serious?" Lila chuckled, shaking her head. "A blender? Why not? It'll give us that sleek, high-tech look. Plus, we can rig it to explode or something when Zarn gets close." As they brainstormed, the tension in the air was palpable. They knew the clock was ticking. Zarn's forces were out there, and they had already begun searching for the weapon that Max had unwittingly claimed as his own. In the darkness outside the lab, shadows moved stealthily. Alien soldiers patrolled the perimeter, their high-tech sensors scanning for any signs of human activity. Zarn, furious at having lost the weapon, was determined to regain control, and he had his best agents on the job. Meanwhile, back in the lab, Max and Lila transformed the old blender into a shiny, faux alien weapon. They wrapped it in foil, painted it a dazzling blue, and attached a few blinking lights they scavenged from an old computer. Lila had to suppress her laughter as Max dramatically posed with the decoy. "Behold the future of Earth's defenses," he proclaimed, waving the blender around like a knight with a sword. "Just don't get too carried away with your speeches," Lila teased, stifling a giggle. "We're not ready for a victory parade yet." "Fine, but when we win, I'm expecting at least a parade float," Max replied, his grin infectious. The next step was to set up the decoy in a nearby abandoned building, a crumbling structure that had been a thriving cafe before the invasion. As they prepared to leave, Max couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to make the biggest mistake of their lives. "Ready?" he asked, glancing at Lila, who was checking her gear one last time. "Let's do this," she said, her expression a mix of determination and apprehension. They crept through the wreckage of the city, their footsteps echoing eerily in the stillness. As they approached the cafe, Max felt a rush of adrenaline. He quickly set the decoy in a prominent spot and activated the remote detonator attached to it. "Okay, if everything goes according to plan, Zarn will come here thinking he's won," Lila said, scanning the area. "And we'll be ready." "Right," Max replied, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "But if this goes south, we make a run for it." "Got it?" "Got it." As they crouched behind a pile of rubble, they waited. Minutes felt like hours, and the tension in the air thickened with every passing second. Finally, the silence was broken by the distant sound of alien footsteps and the low hum of their technology. "There they are," Max whispered, barely containing his excitement. Zarn and a small squad of his best soldiers approached, their movements precise and assured. The commander's voice carried through the air, dripping with arrogance. "They think they can hide from me? Pathetic." Max exchanged a glance with Lila, both of them suppressing grins. "Let's just hope this works," she murmured. Zarn's troops fanned out, weapons at the ready, scanning the area. They seemed to pick up on something, sensing the presence of humans nearby. Max's heart raced as he watched them close in on the cafe. "This is it," he said, holding his breath. "Get ready to trigger the decoy." As Zarn stepped into the cafe, he let out a victorious laugh. "You think you can outsmart me? Show yourselves." Max and Lila exchanged nervous glances, their fingers hovering over the detonator. And then it happened, the moment they had been waiting for. Zarn reached for the decoy weapon, his eyes gleaming with greed. "Now!" Max shouted, slamming his finger down on the button. The decoy exploded in a shower of colorful sparks and loud booms, momentarily blinding the aliens. Zarn staggered back, his expression morphing from triumph to sheer bewilderment. "Fools! You think this will stop me?" he bellowed, recovering quickly. But the blast had disoriented his soldiers, who stumbled over one another, trying to regain their composure. Max and Lila seized the opportunity, sprinting towards the chaos. "Let's go!" Lila shouted, dodging alien soldiers as she grabbed Max's arm, dragging him with her. They dashed down a narrow alley, hearts pounding, laughter bubbling up in their throats. "We did it!" Max exclaimed, exhilarated. "We actually pulled it off." "Don't celebrate too soon," Lila yelled, pointing behind them. Zarn was on their trail, furious and determined. "He's coming!" Max glanced back, adrenaline surging through him. Okay, let's improvise. We need to create a diversion. Right. The alley ahead. Lila suggested, her mind racing. We can hide behind those crates. They dove behind a stack of crates just as Zarn and his troops rounded the corner, their alien weapons at the ready. What now? Max whispered, crouching low, the weight of the alien weapon heavy against his side. Wait for the right moment, Lila said, eyes glued to the enemy. Zarn paced back and forth, barking orders at his soldiers. Search everywhere. They cannot have gone far. Max's heart raced as he listened to the alien commander, who seemed more irritated by their antics than he was scared. I think he's angry, Max muttered, trying to suppress a grin. Understatement of the century, Lila shot back, but she couldn't help but smile at the sight of Zarn's flustered expression. Finally, Zarn turned his back, focusing on his soldiers. Max exchanged a look with Lila, a silent agreement passing between them. Now, they whispered in unison, bursting from their hiding spot and sprinting toward the next street. They zigzagged through the wreckage, their laughter echoing in the chaos. What's the plan now? Max asked breathlessly. We need to regroup, Lila said, scanning for a safe place. I think the old library might work. It's sturdy, and we can block the entrances. Max nodded, his heart still racing from the thrill of their escape. Let's go. They reached the library, its once grand entrance now marred by battle scars. Inside, the scent of old books mingled with the metallic tang of the alien invasion. Max pushed the heavy doors shut, and they quickly moved to barricade it. Okay, Max panted, glancing around the dimly lit interior. What's next? We figure out how to use the alien weapon against Zarn and his troops, Lila said, determination shining in her eyes. This time, we need to be ready. Max nodded, a sense of purpose washing over him. I think I've figured out how to charge it based on what I saw earlier. Great. Let's get to work, Lila said, her fingers already flying over the alien weapon as Max grabbed some nearby books to use as makeshift tools. As they worked together, Max couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something monumental. They were no longer just bumbling soldiers, they were a team. They had turned the tide of the battle once, and they could do it again. With every adjustment they made to the alien weapon, their confidence grew. The bond between them deepened, forged in the fires of chaos and laughter. They had come this far, and now they were ready to face Zarn and his forces head-on. After what felt like hours of tinkering, the weapon hummed with energy, ready for action. Max and Lila exchanged triumphant smiles, knowing that they had turned their misfit adventure into a true mission. Let's end this, Max said, a newfound resolve in his voice. Together, Lila replied, her eyes sparkling with determination. They burst through the library doors, weapons in hand, prepared to face Zarn and whatever chaos awaited them. The streets were alive with the sounds of battle, but this time, they were ready. As they raced towards the chaos, they couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. Who would have thought that a military arms expert and a scientist would become the last line of defense against an alien invasion? The city's skyline loomed ahead, a reminder of what they were fighting for. Max took a deep breath, steeling himself for the confrontation to come. They had each other, and with their unbreakable bond and the power of the alien weapon, they were ready to reclaim their home. Just as they reached the main square, they spotted Zarn, his imposing figure radiating anger as he barked orders at his troops. Find them. They must be here somewhere. Now's our chance. Max said, raising the weapon as the alien forces began to fan out, searching the area. Lila pressed her shoulder against his. Let's show them what we've got. With a determined shout, they charged forward, the alien weapon crackling to life in Mechs' hands. Zarn turned, eyes widening in disbelief as the duo advanced. "You think you can defeat me?" Zarn sneered, raising his weapon. Mechs took a deep breath, steadying himself. "We're about to find out." With a flick of the wrist, he unleashed a surge of energy from the weapon. It soared through the air, illuminating the square with a blinding light, and struck Zarn's weapon mid-fire. The explosion echoed, sending shockwaves through the area. Zarn stumbled back, his troops scattering in confusion. "Retreat," he yelled, but it was too late. The energy blast ricocheted off buildings, taking out several of his soldiers in a spectacular display. Mechs and Lila pressed their advantage, firing the weapon again and again, laughing as they danced through the chaos. They had become a force to be reckoned with. "Look at us!" Mechs shouted, exhilarated. "We're doing it!" Lila beamed at him, her joy infectious. "This is amazing! We're unstoppable!" But just as victory seemed within reach, Zarn regained his footing. Raging with fury, he pointed at them, rallying his remaining soldiers. "You will pay for this humiliation." Mechs' heart raced as he realized the tide might turn again. "We need to retreat." "Get to higher ground," he yelled, grabbing Lila's hand. They dashed up a nearby stairway, bursting onto a rooftop that overlooked the square. Gasping for breath, they paused for a moment to regroup. Okay, we've got the high ground," Mechs said, trying to catch his breath. "But we need to keep moving." Lila looked out over the chaos, her mind racing. "We need to draw them in again, but this time, we can set another trap, like a double bluff?" Mechs suggested, eyes glinting with excitement. "Let's make them think we're cornered." "Yes!" Lila exclaimed, already sketching out a plan in her mind. "We'll use the weapon's energy to create a diversion. They won't know what hit them." With renewed determination, they prepared for their next move. They worked quickly, setting the alien weapon to create a powerful blast that would appear as though they were vulnerable. As Zarn's forces began to regroup below, Mechs and Lila huddled together, whispering final instructions. "On my count," Mechs said, his heart pounding in his chest. 3, 2, 1. They activated the weapon, sending a brilliant flash of energy cascading down into the square. Zarn and his troops hesitated, confusion etched on their faces. "What is this trickery?" Zarn shouted, but it was too late. The energy blast erupted, catching them off guard and sending them reeling. "Now!" Mechs yelled, and they charged down from the rooftop, the alien weapon crackling with energy as they dove into the fray once more. In the chaos, they fought side by side, laughter mingling with determination as they dodged incoming blasts and unleashed their own. The power of the alien weapon surged with every use, and with each successful shot, their confidence grew. "Look out!" Lila shouted, pulling Mechs out of the way just as an alien soldier lunged at them. "Thanks." Mechs grinned, firing the weapon at the soldier and watching as it disintegrated in a shower of sparks. "This is better than any video game." As they fought their way through the remnants of Zarn's forces, they began to realize something remarkable: they were making a difference. With every alien they took down, the tide of the battle shifted. Finally, they faced Zarn one last time, the alien commander glaring at them with a mixture of fury and disbelief. "You think you've won? I will not be defeated by two insignificant beings." Mechs stepped forward, raising the weapon defiantly. "You messed with the wrong humans, Zarn." With a final surge of energy, they unleashed everything they had left. The blast struck Zarn directly, and in a dazzling explosion of light, he was thrown backward, crashing into the remnants of his own forces. As the dust settled, Max and Lila stood together, breathing heavily, their eyes wide with disbelief. They had done it. They had defeated Zarn and his troops. Cheers erupted from the remaining human forces, their voices rising in jubilation. "We did it. We actually did it." Max turned to Lila, their shared excitement palpable. "We really pulled that off, didn't we?" "Together," she said, her smile brighter than ever. As they stood amidst the celebration, surrounded by friends and allies, Max felt a profound sense of fulfillment. They had taken on an overwhelming enemy and emerged victorious, not as traditional soldiers, but as unlikely heroes, and in that moment, he realized that perhaps his destiny wasn't about being the celebrated military expert he had always imagined. It was about connection, collaboration, and the laughter shared in the face of danger. With the remnants of the alien invasion behind them, Max and Lila looked to the future, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, two misfits turned champions, ready to tackle anything that came their way. "Let's get back to work," Max said with a grin. "I have a feeling this isn't over yet." Lila laughed, already brainstorming their next adventure. "You know what? I think I'm up for it." And so, with hearts full of hope and laughter, they stepped forward into a new chapter, ready to embrace whatever came next.